Manzoor Ismailzada with another episode of MPG Podcasts. Um, this is Manzoor Ismailzada, your host with the MPG Podcast. I welcome everyone that's watching us live on YouTube or they're watching our podcast later on. Today, we're very honored to have my dear friend, my brother Asad Faruqi. He's a certified public accountant, and I really welcome him to our program. We're going to have a good discussion. I want to invite him to introduce himself in his own words and give us some background about him, his background, his family. Please, Brother Asad.
Hey, salam everyone. Happy to be here. So I'm a CPA, certified public accountant by profession. And just a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in Pakistan, Karachi. So that's where I grew up. And then I moved to US with my family. And I've been here for 7 years and I've been practicing in accounting and tax. I started in a volunteer tax program by the IRS, then went to a small CPA firm. I was there for a few years, then went to a big four accounting firm, EY. So I was there, and then this year I started my own CPA firm. So yeah, just
MashaAllah.
trying to help as many people as I can with my accounting and tax knowledge, and make sure, especially our Ummah, our Muslim entrepreneurs and business owners, really get this information out, and apply that and save as much as tax as possible.
Absolutely. And brother, you mentioned you're from Pakistan. I don't know if our audience know that I've lived in Pakistan for a long time. Love that country. I used to live in Islamabad. And you said you were from Karachi. So you came here how long ago?
In 2018. So
2018,
2018,
mashallah.
yeah, I came here in
Not long ago.
2018. Yeah, I was 2018, came here, I got my citizenship. So alhamdulillah, I'm a citizen now. Um,
Beautiful.
got my CPA license, and now I'm a practicing CPA, helping people with their accounting and tax. Yeah.
Absolutely. And as far as the family, uh, are you living with family? Are you
Yeah, I'm
single?
yeah, yeah. So I am married, and my spouse is
Congratulations.
actually in Pakistan. She's waiting for her visa. So we're married but in a long distance relationship. I actually got married last year. So hopefully we'll have my spouse here soon. Yeah,
I
and
went through that, brother, for a few years, so I could definitely relate. And inshallah, our Bobby comes here soon. So
yeah,
let's get
definitely.
into our topic for tonight is about saving on taxes, the halal way, and how we can help our Muslim entrepreneurs to save on their taxes. But first, I want to ask you, what are some myths? Because some of our audience or some of our listeners may be individuals and not business owners. But what are some myths or misconceptions that you see widely common among people? What are some things that people get wrong most of the time?
Right. Yeah. Before that, I'll actually, just to present you, like, tax is, it's always going to be very important, right? Always be paying in tax because that's how the government runs, right? And then we know there's certain things that government are basically funding, worry about, like, hey, our U.S. government is funding Ukraine or Israel, or again, policies we might agree, we might not agree. So the more tax that we save, the more tax that we can spend on things that we generally want to spend on, right? So our family, our careers, our businesses, things that we generally want, and people that we generally want to help. So that's why it's really important to save every penny as much as possible, but make sure it's in a legal and halal way. So that's obviously important. Um,
Especially in this situation that's going on in the Middle East. I think that's
exactly.
one of our biggest thing that we don't want our tax dollars to go to war and, be consumed with wrong purposes. So please tell us how we can save that and how can we can
Yeah, yeah.
avoid that from
So
going there.
absolutely, we'll discuss, more technical strategies and everything. But just to cover the misconceptions first, I
Sure.
think the number one thing that people have is like, hey, tax, it's just a rich people's game. If you are rich, only then you can, play the rich people's game. But the
Sure.
reality is, We all can to an extent. Now, obviously, the more money you have, the more options you have, the more investment they can make. You can do a lot more things. But even as somebody who's like, let's say, a small business owner, first of all, you have a lot more options, right? And tax is going to be a huge deal. So if you utilize tax strategies, nothing too complicated, even the basic ones, right? Making sure you have the right business structure, whether it's LC or S corp. Again, we'll discuss more in detail as we move forward. But just these things, depreciation is a huge, huge plus when it comes to taxes. So all these really add up, right? When we think of our total income, and then another big misconception that we have is that like if you are a working professional, you don't have a business,
Hmm.
you there's very limited options for you. Now that is true to an extent, right? If you're a business owner, you can take all your expenses deduction, you can do a lot more things. But
Right.
as an employee, you still have options, right? And what's that? You can invest in real estate, right? I have
Mhm.
clients that are high net worth, right? They're making a lot more money in their careers and they invest in short term rental properties, right? So Airbnbs. That's a very good tax saving strategy if you are a high income earner. So there you make a lot of money and then you get a property, you can take depreciation, you can take a lot of bonus depreciation. So you can reduce your tax income at the end of the year. Again, just trying to keep it as simple so everybody can understand.
Definitely.
And
No,
then
that's really good and easy to understand. I'm following you
yes,
for sure.
absolutely. So there are options, and the obviously your tax-free accounts, right? So your retirement accounts, um, the way you can put your investments in, those are important, especially if you are a high income earner. So those are a lot of things that people sometimes miss, and they have this misconception like, hey, maybe I don't want to get into this conversation at all because it might not be for me. And then one of the very basic misconception is that LLCs will help you save on taxes. And that's completely not true. LLC will not save you on taxes. They are not even a tax entity. They are a
Mm.
legal entity, right? So when you have an
Right.
LLC, it protects you from, somebody, let's say, God forbid, somebody sues you, you have that protection. But it does not do anything from a tax point of view. So a lot of people that come to me like, hey, I have an LLC. How can I save on taxes? Or, how will that save on taxes? The reality is that, itself doesn't help you save on taxes. Now, if you have other deductions, other things that you're doing, expenses that you have, that will obviously help you. So
Sure.
yeah, these are like the common misconceptions people have. They obviously like, tons and thousands of things that people consider, but um, these are like the most common ones.
Absolutely. And we asked our friends and our groups in the Muslim professional group to see what questions they might have. The main things they want to cover is like what are some instruments that's the halal way we could save on taxes, or a small business entrepreneur can use to save taxes on.
Right. So, it's a big deal because we want to obviously make sure that everything that we're doing is in a halal way, right? But at the same time, we want to make sure that our money is growing, we're saving as much as possible. Um, so the first thing is obviously whatever you're donating to for your charity, for your sadaqahs, all that is tax deductible, right?
Nice.
Again, it depends. There are certain, like circumstances where you want to look at like, hey, if this applies to, each individual, right? There's a itemized deduction, standard deduction. So all this again, now especially with election, a lot is going to change. Our standard deductions, our itemized deduction will change a bit depending on what policies we have. But generally, all your donations, if you donate to, a registered organization like your mosque or your charity organizations,
Or a
those
nonprofit like MPG, because we're a registered nonprofit. What they call it, there's a title for it,
oh
503C or
yeah,
something
those
like
are
that.
like specific names, but generally anything that's nonprofit, right? You get exemptions from the IRS. So everything you donate, obviously, first of all, if you're donating, you're doing for the right cause. You're getting burger for that, so that's a plus. But then
Absolutely.
on top of that, you get a tax saving, right? So you're saving your tax dollar, so that's a really good thing. And then there are a lot of things that people are doing where investing in they have their investments in certain stocks, or like they have just like in saving accounts, usually they'll end up paying riba interest. Now
Right.
obviously as Muslims, everybody do each their own, but as Muslims we want to avoid, make sure that we
Stay
stay
away
away from
from
that.
interest as much as
Yeah.
possible. Absolutely.
So that's a very critical thing. Now there are a lot of options, right, when it comes to stocks, even real estate, right? So a lot of my clients they are in real estate, and there are options where you can have Sharia compliant, financing options. So now, especially we're living in a society where we have options even in the West. So just making sure we are careful. Now, obviously, that will require a bit more research, making sure you are communicating with your professionals, whoever you're dealing with. So those are the things that we want to make sure we're really looking out for. And then a lot of things, right? The general um, tax saving strategies like home office deduction is such a plus, especially if you have a home office. I usually share like a template with my clients. They have this thing where they'll fill out the information and then it adds up. And depreciation again. If you have assets, huge assets, depreciation is going to be a huge plus for you. Why? Because you're not
Oh,
paying out of pocket.
absolutely. I want to stop you for 1 second. This
Sure, yeah.
depreciation concept, because it applies to real estate and non-real estate, I want you to unpack it a little bit. Let's say you have a property, like it's a house or a rental.
Hmm.
How does the depreciation work and how it works in your
Right.
favor?
Right, absolutely. So this is a great question, actually. I'm glad you asked this. So what happened is, let's say you get a house. So I'll give you an example. One of my clients, he's a high income earner, right? He makes about 350 or something a year, 350,000 a year,
Nice.
and he got a property for $600,000. Now, because now that property asset is about $600,000 a year, but because of depreciation, you can depreciate. What is exactly depreciation is? It's a wear and tear expense.
Hmm.
Technically, IRS lets you take just like, hey, your property will go down and you'll have wear and tear expense. You will be repairing it. So IRS lets you just take a non-cash expense, right? So it's not
Right.
something you're paying out of pocket. You're just taking it on your tax return. So
Correct.
his $600,000 property, he's able to take a huge chunk of 600,000. About it was about 200,000, I believe. So that was basically a deduction against his 350 income, right? So now his net income was 150 only. Why? Because he's able to take that $200,000 as an expense, right?
That's
So
huge.
that is a huge. And the plus point is like if you are making a lot of money, that higher income money, right? The top money will be taxed at a really high tax bracket, right? So he was getting taxed at 35, around yeah 35%, depending on again his exact tax bracket. Though keeps changing every year. So, but then this is exactly how depreciation can be a huge deal. And then there are certain examples where people get some equipment for their business, right? So um, uh, if just to give like some trucks if they're a construction owner, or so all those depreciation you can use depreciation everywhere, right? And so those are where you want to be careful. Now depreciation is something you want to keep track of, right? It's because you're taking it year over year. So it's
Right.
getting a bit more technical, but yeah, like you have to make sure that you are tracking it properly. So that's another thing. Um,
Certainly.
but yeah, other than that, the like really good strategy is just making sure you're keeping your accounting and finance, just tracking everything on a monthly basis. I emphasize this with with my clients a lot. Most of my clients are actually monthly clients, the ones that are big enough, obviously. So I keep make sure that I they get their P&L, their profit and loss statement every month. So
Hmm.
they know how much they're making. They can make their decisions based on that. Like, hey, you know, not only I'm able to see how much is my top line, how much is coming in, plus I know how much my expenses are, the net profit I'm making, right? Because what happened is when your business grows, you have a lot of expenses, you have employees, and then you really don't exactly know because you only see, hey, money's coming in, but at the end of the month, your bank account is empty. You have not a lot of idea where the money is going. So just making sure that you're really understanding your top of your accounting and finances on every month, that
So
really helps.
my question is, Asad, how the people keep track of these expenses? Is there like a way you recommend or an app, or is that a service you provide? Like how, like a small business, not like a big enterprise, but a small business or a few employees, how they can keep on top of this?
Right. So, a lot of people, when they're just like starting up their business just from the scratch, this is the advice for you. You just have an Excel or Google spreadsheet. You just check like, hey, this is the money coming in, and these are my expenses, right? Now, as you grow, you're making a lot more money. You have, let's say, some contractors or employees. You want to get to QuickBooks. Even if you don't have employees, I really recommend QuickBooks, right? Why? Because it makes sure that nothing, you're not missing any expense. Because what happens is people miss a lot of the expenses if they're just tracking by themselves. Plus, you don't have the proper trail or the evidence for, let's say, if IRS come back to you, they want more evidence. You're not going to have that. So QuickBooks is really good at this. I provide this accounting bookkeeping service, so I help my clients, making sure. Now, obviously, they're a bit more bigger clients. Some are smaller too, but just making sure they're on top of it because people really neglect this. And when tax time comes, they're not really ready. They don't have a lot of idea like how they want to go about it, and then at tax time, your accountant is not gonna have a lot of time, right? It doesn't matter, you know, who you have, how great he is, because he's just so busy, right? He's busy with a lot of clients. There's a lot much going. So the good time to have a conversation is actually, I would say, end of year, where you're still in the year, you can make changes to your tax year. So that's where you really can make a lot of things happen.
So let me ask you one question. Uh,
Sure.
it's kind of related to this.
Yeah.
Um, People want to buy a house, for example,
Yeah.
and the the reporting or whatever taxes they have is not enough to support their income. They have like cash businesses and stuff, especially with our people, it's a bit common. But how to avoid something like that, that you're not, you know, putting yourself in a position that you, yes, you're not making any money, but now you can't buy anything. You can't invest in real estate. How can you avoid a situation like that? How can I decrease or reduce my taxable income while still showing a bank, for example, that I am in business and I can make money?
Yeah, so this is actually a really good question, and I've had people where they're not showing that much income, so because of that, their income is low, and they don't qualify for their home loans or other kind of loans that they want for their business. Now, if you have real estate and you're taking like a huge depreciation that I just mentioned, one of the examples earlier, that if you work with a lender that understands real estate, they will be okay with that. But if somebody, a lot of, as I said, in our community, there are a lot of people who are just, they're hardworking, they're just doing on a cash basis, and what they're reporting is the income might not be as high. For them, it is a bit of fraud challenge. Um, so if you have depreciation, you can show like, hey, dude, listen, this is how much I'm making, but it's because of the depreciation, my net income is lower. Then that's something you can work with a real estate officer where he can figure it out for you. But as you said, with someone who's just have like cash based business or has been showing low income, that will be a bit of a problem. So you have to, if you have, and then you have like if I think with if you're buying a property, if you have a lot more cash, then obviously that's something you can do, or different things. But from a tax perspective, that is a little bit hard to um, yeah solve. That's a bit tricky part.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about tax audit, or how to, like, what are some of the things that you see or mistakes people make that triggers or, is a red flag to the IRS, and how you can stay clear of those, and what are some of the mistakes you see people will often do that puts them in a bad position?
Right. So, one of the very first thing I tell my clients, like, hey, we do not want to mess with IRS because they can come back to you anytime they want, after a few years too, with their fines and penalties. So it's just painful process. We want to make sure we have a good record and evidence of everything that we're doing, right? All the expenses that we're taking, where the money's coming from, what expenses that we have, what employees that we have. If you have a good record, then you don't have anything to worry about, right? Sometimes they will ask for more evidence. Sometimes you will have to go through an audit. That happens from time to time, even if you have a good record. But you can avoid, a lot of the red flags in IRS system if you're keeping your things properly, you're managing your account properly. Um, a lot of times, what happens is people will just, they will come up with their expenses or deductions by themselves, and it could be anything, right? So you need to know what you need to know what expenses you are actually taking, and you have
Hmm.
to have proper receipts and proper just money trail of what expenses you have, or at least in your bank statement, right? So you can be like, hey, this is my business account that I just use for my business, and these are the expenses that these are the general business expenses for this specific business. So if you don't have that, it's really hard to just fight the IRS because they are the one who questions you, and they are the one who decide like if this is okay or not. So it's a little bit hard. So you want to make sure you're doing things properly, so that way you're not doing anything suspicious, um, and then that way it will be a bit easier for you. Another thing that I see sometimes is people sometimes, let's say somebody has somebody's an employee, he works a 9 to 5 job. What he will do is he will get a he'll they will start a side hustle business just for the sake of saving on taxes, right? So they will create an LLC, and they will
Hmm.
just be like, hey, I have this much $20,000 in expenses. Now, if it's a general business, it's okay. It's not a problem. But if you keep having a side hustle where you're just deducting or you're having a loss year over year, that's going to be a problem. IRS has specific law against a hobby loss. You cannot have a business that's just like a hobby for you, right? For example, gardening, right? You can be like, hey, I'm just or a travel blog. A travel blog is such a common one because people are like, hey, I'm just blogging or vlogging and this is my business. But if you don't have a genuine business purpose, ours will, they won't accept all your deductions, and you will have to actually pay them with fines and penalties. So that's something you really
So
want
is
to be
there
careful.
like a limit, like how much time you have to spend on that, or how much money you're generating? Is there
Right.
like a specific thing on that?
So the IRS rule is that they look at 5 years, right? So out of 5 years, if let's say 3 or 4 years are just losses and huge losses, especially, and they, they think that this is for not a genuine business purpose, then that's a problem. Now, on the other hand, I'll give you this example. A lot of the pharmaceutical companies, right? All the pharmacies, they are investing in their drugs. They have the research and development going on because they want to, come up with a new drug that's gonna help, cure cancer or any other problems. Now they keep on, they're doing over year. They go for about like 10, 15, 20 years, and that's not a problem. Why? Because they have a genuine business purpose.
Right.
So my point is, if you have a genuine business purpose, you don't have to worry about anything, right? Because that happens. That's part of business. But if you're just doing just for the sake of just having expenses, that's going to be a problem, right?
And you're the expert. I want to add just one point
Yeah,
because that my real estate kicks in.
yeah,
Sometimes people keep cash in their accounts or they keep cash at home. So when they want to buy a house, correct me if I'm wrong, money has to be, the cash has to be trackable for 90 days in an account for
yes,
the IRS to be aware of it. So if you have a house on the contract and now you're telling me, oh, I have $50,000 cash, you have to deposit that and wait for 90 days to clear that. So that always causes a problem. Is that accurate based on what you're seeing?
yes, that's correct. Now, obviously, I'm like from a tax perspective, it's again with real estate, whenever you're buying a property, right? I'm sure obviously now you are the expert, for this, but whenever you're buying a property, they want to make sure that you just don't have money out of the blue, right? So If you have the money in your bank, or even if you have money that you're receiving, let's say from your family or someone else, just having the money trail is important, right? You have like, hey, if you're getting money from someone else, just just transfer it through the bank account. That's a lot better. And then just have it for in your bank for at least 3 months, 4 months. So that's that way, the bank, like when you're going for purchasing a house, everybody is like, hey, this is like my money rather than the money's coming in your bank account or you have cash out of nowhere. So yeah, these are the little bit of things you want to be careful of. But this applies more to like the real estate, when you're purchasing a property. But then from a tax perspective, not really. Like it's not that important. Yeah.
So I have a question that's coming in.
Yeah.
How do changes in tax laws affect individuals? Um, what financial metrics should be, what financial factors we should be monitoring? So in case we have like a general or a huge tax law changes, how does that affect a single person or an
Right.
individual?
So I mean, right. So this tax is such a huge deal where everybody talks about, like, especially when it comes to election time, right? Like Donald Trump, before the election happened, he wanted to just eliminate income tax. He wanted to make
Right.
sure nobody's paying income tax. He wanted to implement tariffs on companies, foreign companies. Now, a lot of things are people say when they're up for election, they sometimes some things obviously they go through, some of the stuffs don't. So we have to be make sure that wait for those things to go through. But
Hmm.
how does it actually affect us? So let's say, so Kamala Harris, right? The Democrats, the
Democrat.
Democrats Party, they wanted to up the corporate tax rate from 21% to 28%. Now it's
That's big.
generally for like the bigger companies, right? Like your big companies, your public companies. That those are the ones. So that those are C corps. Now a lot of the smaller companies, they are not C corp, generally speaking.
Hmm.
So it was for them, but the problem is that's such a huge percentage for companies who are making billions of dollars or millions of dollars, right? So
Absolutely.
how they're going to deal with that, they will pass on those as an expense to us as consumers, right? So when we go to buy our new iPhone, or we go to buy some of the groceries from Walmart, they will have to make sure that we'll be the one at the end paying for that increase. So that's how things works. That's why they always try to decrease the taxes so companies get the relief, but then so hopefully they will give the customers some relief. So that's how the system works. Now again, there are a lot of things that go into it, but that's like a very simple picture.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And that kind of reminds me of my other question. For a small business, what is a good formation or I know you said LLC is a legal entity, but what are the other options? I'm aware of 1099, um, which is like individual contractor, or we have W-2 workers, but for a small business, what options do they have?
Right. Okay. So when we're talking from a small business owner perspective, I'll give you a very simplified version because this could get very, very lengthy and technical. But
Right.
simplified version is you can be an LLC or a 1099. It doesn't matter from a tax perspective, right? So
Okay.
1099 or LLC, it's the same thing when it comes to tax. Okay. The other thing is S corp. S corp
Hmm.
is one of the most common type of corporation for small business owners.
Right.
Why is that? Because you don't pay the self-employment tax of 15%, about 15% when you are self-employed, when you are a S corp. So that's a huge plus, compared to, let's say, if an LLC or a 1099. Now, this is the second type. And now if you're wondering like why, like what's the catch, or why doesn't everybody just convert to a S corp? The
Right.
reason is you have to have a lot more things where you're running payroll for yourself. Even as
Mm.
like a solo business owner, you're running payroll. You have to keep track of your accounting and bookkeeping. There's a lot more procedures that you have to follow. You have to file a separate business return. So a lot more cost or time associated with these kind of things. but then you get that nice 15% self-employment tax saving. So the general idea that we accountants tell our client is like, hey, if you are netting your net income or your net profit is at least 50,000, at least 50 to 60,000, then you can consider about if you want to convert to a S corp, right? So that's the good time to consider if you want to convert to S corp. You want to start, you're starting from zero, you don't even need to worry about your LLC unless you want to think of it from a legal perspective. You can start, you're 1099, you're making money, and then your net income again, not your top line, not your revenue, your net
Right.
income needs to be at least 50, ideally 60 to 70,000 for the year, and then you can consider. Again, that
Got it.
doesn't mean that would be valuable, but you should have the conversation with your accountant, and he should be able to guide you depending on what business you have, what's your skill set. You can really, that's when you can figure out whether S corp is good for you. The other one, as I mentioned earlier, is C corp. Now, C corp is where you just pay the tax 21%. It's 21% right now.
Hmm.
Um, but it's usually for businesses that are a bit bigger, that have a lot of inventory, a lot of assets. So if you have a business like that, where you have a lot of things going on, then that might be a good idea to have a C corp. Again, it depends mostly for if you what kind of business you have, what's what kind of assets you have in your business within your business. But generally, a lot of the small business owners, they start with 1099 LLC, and then they convert to S corp, and that's where they stay.
Thank you. That gives us a good idea.
Yeah,
So, Asad, why use you? We have options like TurboTax and people that have the engine R block. Why you like? What do you do differently as a certified public accountant, and why people should go to you?
yeah. So I'll start off by saying this: like, if somebody is happy with their accountant, they feel like I'm getting all the tax strategies, the tax deduction, or or is person responding well, or I'm getting things done properly. You do not need to change, right? If you're happy, you're good. But if somebody feels like, hey, I don't get a response from my accountant on time, I'm not able to talk to my accountant all year round, then you might want to have the conversation like, hey, do I need to change do I need to change my accountant? Do I want something more out of my tax bill? Right? You have a huge tax bill at the end of the year, and you're always annoyed that you're not happy with that. That's when you want to make sure hey, is this something I want to change or not? Or but again, as I said, if somebody with problem with all of the problem with H&R or TurboTax is like with TurboTax you were doing by yourself. So obviously if somebody is feels like they're good enough, or they're filing their own tax return, they have the information, or they can do some research, or they have a simplified case, then it might not be a bad idea. But with HRM block, they have people rotating every year, so you're not able to. You just have the year end access, right? You just go to them once a
Right.
year. With me, I talk to my clients all year round. They have my number. They contact me whenever they want. So it's like a more personalized experience. If they need me, I'm always there for them.
So, you can answer this one in a short format. Is that something falls under your department or no? The tax planning. Is that something you do with your clients? You sit down and you say, okay, for the next year, this is what we're going to do? Or is that something they need a financial planner to sit down and do it and then they kind of report to you? How does that work?
Yeah. So when it comes to tax planning, I do work with. So tax planning is my area because I am the CPA, I'm the accountant,
Perfect.
but it's I would say it's included within the financial planning part, right? So there are clients where I talk to their financial advisors, I work with them and collaborate with them, and then we
Beautiful.
look at the situation, what we have to do. Maybe sometimes they have some suggestions that I want to look at. Sometimes they come up things that are good from a financial perspective, but then they're neglecting the tax side. So
Correct.
you want to make sure that you have right because tax is going to be a big deal, especially as you are growing, as you're making more income. So that's something that I do deal with my clients. Plus, I always say this to my clients or whenever somebody wants to reach out is the good time is to, if you want tax planning, is in that year, not after the year has ended, right? So before the year
Exactly.
end, you want to make sure that you are talking to your accountant, your CPA, or your financial advisor, because some things you can do after the year end, but a lot of the things you might not be able to, right? So if you want to do the planning, you have things that you want somebody to look at. You want to make sure that you reach out before the year end. Yeah. So that's
Beautiful.
that's what I would say.
So we have some youth maybe watching us, or some of our friends who are watching this podcast. They may have family members who are interested in becoming a CPA. How to go about it? How long does it take? And do you like your job? Is that something you recommend for our youth? Because I don't think we have a lot of CPAs. So what do you think for our community, if that's a good thing?
Yeah. No, I think it's a really rewarding career. Why? Because tax is always changing, right? Just like with tech, you always need an accountant, right?
Hmm.
Until a day comes where AI takes over everything, we will need somebody, a tax advisor, somebody who can listen to clients and help them with their tax situations.
Correct.
And so it's a great career. Obviously, the path is going to university, getting your CPA, getting your passing your exams for the CPA license. That also includes, I had to actually do a 5-year program. So instead of 120 credits, I had to do
Mm,
150 credits, and then
beautiful.
pass the four CPA exams. Then I had to do the work experience requirement, and then you become the CPA, licensed CPA. And not only that, I think what I would recommend is like you can, like I did, I started in a small CPA firm. You learn the ins and out. You get to experience more about the local. Obviously, that was a small firm in East Brunswick. So you get the exposure in. Then I went to a really big firm. That was a huge, huge firm. You get how to be more professional, dealing with clients that are huge. I work with you know companies like BMW, Verizon, so really
Right,
huge
right.
companies. So, and then once you have that, good mix of experience, you feel confident, you know what you're doing, you can go out on your own and start your own CPA and accounting firm. So I think this actually is a really solid path to entrepreneurship. And also, um, because the safety, or, the safe side of the accounting and tax makes it really enticing to be an entrepreneur, business owner, because business is risky. Whatever doesn't matter how good you are, or whatever how really good you are, it's always going to be
Exactly.
risky. But the
Yeah,
accounting tax is just like your old boring kind of a job, where if you mix these two, it gives you like a really best of both worlds, right? So you have the best side. So definitely 100% recommend to anyone. And if any the younger generation is watching us, like I would be absolutely happy if they want to reach out, learn more about it. Yeah.
I appreciate it. So this will bring me to my last question. Before I ask you my question, I want to give you a compliment. A lot of the CPAs, or even not this financial advisor, but especially accountants I met, they're not too much people's person. They're very analytical and numbers people. But you're a great fit in our group, our MPG. You're a people's person, and we really appreciate that.
Thank you.
That makes
Appreciate
it
that.
much more fun, and also you give that human and an emotional touch to it. Now, how do you think networks like us, like Muslim Professional Group, affect these jobs? And how what is the value that they're bringing? Let's say you're an accountant. How do you see these networks helping you in your networking?
I think the main value is, right. Like, it doesn't matter you're an accountant, you are a real estate agent or a financial advisor, whoever you are, you like, first of all, you want to work with person you actually like. And I think whenever I'm just looking for someone, right, if someone's telling me like, hey, they're Muslim too, I feel that instant connection, right? So that's the number one thing. And then,
Absolutely.
like, you want to work with somebody that you can relate to. They might have same experience, and they might have the same struggle, or at least to an extent. So it's
Hmm.
always, you have that nice feeling whenever you're working with. So groups like these, you're basically collecting all the professionals, the experience that they have, the network, right? So it's a good thing for the Ummah that, they're bringing everyone together. And then obviously, you want to make sure that, supporting each other, doing good things, providing good service. And yeah, that's the whole idea. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate you and all our listeners. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. If you're seeing us on social media, like and comment. We're going to share Brother Asad's information in the description of the video. You can reach out to him and use him as a service provider. This is how you know we're live because I have motion detected lights and it turned off on me. But I really appreciate your time, Brother Asad. Thank you very much for
Yeah, no problem.
accepting our information.
Thanks for having me. Really
Have a
appreciate it.
wonderful night. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Assalamu alaikum.